3. Hello everybody, Tyrone TG3 here, Pocket the Monster, Horizons! Alright, let's get to it with episodes 74 and 75. Episode 74 is The Three Explorers. Episode 75 is The Future. We've been entrusted the shine of this world. That's a long title. Episode 75 is a long title. And honestly, I think episode 75 should be titled The Three Explorers, but I'll get into that later. So let's go into the episodes. And I'm reviewing these two episodes together only because I feel like they both cover Miss Diana, Liko, and look, once we get into it, you'll see exactly what I'm cooking here, because we get a lot of lore. These are two very lore-heavy episodes. One's more or less a recap and some gathering information type situation, which honestly I respect. The next half is like lore. And the way they get that lore is kinda... So, Miss Diana returns. Yeah, she's back. Liko's grandma back in the fray. I love it. She was gone for a decent amount of time. She was with the explorers for a decent amount of time. By the time she comes back, Liko, Roy, and Dot's Pokemon have fully, well, not fully evolved, but they've evolved to their next stage. Liko and the others are definitely a lot stronger around this point, and Diana wants to test that by having a battle with Liko. Liko wins the battle. I don't know how I feel about this, just because a middle stage Florgato grass type Pokemon beating a fully evolved, experienced Arcanine seems kinda sus. But part of me's thinking one of two things. One, that Arcanine's probably old. It's probably old. It's probably been with Miss Diana for a while, so it's not like the spring chicken that it used to be. It's not as spry as it could be. It's not at its peak. At least that's the headcanon I'm giving it. And two, part of me thinks Miss Diana was going a little easy on her. Not too much. Not as much as she was when Florgato was still a Sprigatito. But definitely easier than like her going all out. Like she didn't terrestrialize, so that's a thing. Because I'm sure if Arcanine had terrestrialized in a fire Arcanine and then used its full power, it would have obliterated Liko's Florgato in an instant. Like, I'm like almost 200% certain that probably would have happened. Two, it is interesting that they show off the ability Justify, because Florgato does know a dark type move, Sucker Punch. So hitting Arcanine with Sucker Punch made the Justify go off, because Arcanine's other ability is Intimidate and it didn't use it. So by default, Justify has to be the other ability unless it's a hidden ability. So that's cool. I actually do like that. Attention to detail. It's a pretty fun fight, and then afterwards we still got time to do some lore dump. We learned that Freed didn't tell everybody that he worked for Exceed, even though we actually seen him talk to Exceed members before, but it was separated from everybody else. So Freed finally brings that part up to everybody in the cast. Liko forgets to mention that she spoke to Amatheo and heard the name Gibeon. Gibeon is Amatheo's grandfather, so Gibeon lived long enough. But the problem is that Gibeon also knew Lucius and also knew Ristle. So Ristle, Gibeon, and Lucius were like a traveling three, and that will be details for the next episode. But for now, they learn this information and they go, wait a minute, that was well over 100 years ago. There's no way on earth Gibeon can still be alive. He's still alive. I guess they don't know he's just on life support, probably. Or he was probably exposed to the Requiem, the pink crystals that they saw earlier in their journey. So maybe that's prolonging his life. We don't have much detail on that right now, and I'm sure we'll get those details in the future. But as of now, Gibeon's the only one of the three that are still alive. Ristle's name is brought up, and because she's brought up, Liko gets the idea to head back to the Shining Pond back at Kitakami. So they head back to the Shining Pond at Kitakami, and I'm not making this up, they pray. In God we pray. But no, they pray. They pray. And because they pray, Bristol shows up. Like Bristol shows up, and it's clear it's not any different than Scarlet and Violet, where Professor Toro or I can't remember Arvin's mother's name right now because I played Violet, not Scarlet. But when Professor Toro shows up, he's showing up from the past and seeing you in the future. So the same thing happens here. It's like they obviously put a lot of energy into meeting Ristal, and Terapagos is there. They're at the Shining Lake. I'm gonna let it slide. It is an ass pull. It definitely is. But I'm gonna go ahead and let it. Whatever, fine. I'm not. So let me get this covered up. Let me show you all how I feel about this. I'm not a giant fan of two major things in fiction. Time travel's tricky. Unless it's like Dragon Ball, where they do like parallel universe time travel, where nothing affects the past if you mess with it. But Pokemon has shown that it uses linear time travel, although you've also got the Fallers. It's a mess. Pokemon doesn't even know how it deals with time travel. I think one time the closest we got was Celebi and Dialga. Celebi would take you back in time, but you didn't really interact with anything in Heart Gold, Soul Silver when you went back in time except fought Giovanni. Nothing truly crazy happened. Pokemon handling time travel is very weird. But the problem here is they meet Ristal, and Ristal has a baby. Turns out the baby's name is, I completely forgot it actually. It's Lila? Yeah, Lila? I think it's Lila. Lila. And Lila is Miss Diana's mother. So that means Lila is Liko's great-grandmother, which means that Ristal is Liko's great-great-grandmother. Well, Ristal and Lucius at some point got to and because they did the that means that Ristal gave birth to Lila, and Lila gave birth to Diana, Miss Diana. Miss Diana gave birth to Liko's mother. Liko's mother gave birth to Liko. And here we are several years later. But I'm gonna be honest, I think 100 years, all of that can still be feasible. The average person lives to about age, 80? Now, they do cover some of this. Miss Diana at the end of the episode says that Ristal died early. And I'm surprised how many people are saying the word die in Pokemon. This is the Japanese version. I'm curious to see how they'll handle it in the dub. But yeah, people straight up die. And the weirdest interactions happen here because now that they've discovered that Ristal is Liko's great-great-grandmother, Ristal comedically is like, hey, I'm not that old. And we get a funny little moment. And honestly, I love it. Pokemon's never really had a Descendants lore-based thing with the main character. It's never really happened. Not even with side characters. That's because Ash's father is something Pokemon just wanted to shove under the bed forever and hopes it never sees the light of day. But Liko, on the other hand, has a full-fledged family. She has a mother, a father that we've all seen on screen. She has a grandmother we've seen on screen. And as of now, she has a great-grandmother and great-great-grandmother we've seen on screen. And a great-great-grandfather who we know as Lucius. We've got more family lore out of Liko. We've got 90% more family lore out of Liko than I think we've ever gotten in any Pokemon character at all. That includes Brock and his tons of brothers and sisters, plus mother and father, and Misty's several sisters. And then even if you count other Pokemon characters, this is about as much lore. The closest we ever gotten to this, I think, is Nurse Joy and her several different cousins and mothers and sisters. But it's crazy. Pokemon's never really covered family before, and Pokemon has never dared touch the idea of a family tree before. So weirdly, this is the first time we even get a legit Pokemon family tree. We don't know anything about Ash's grandparents. We only know Delia, Ash's mother. So it's crazy that Pokemon even considered going this far. We get Gary, whose grandfather is Professor Oak, but that's about it. That's it. Pokemon the anime has never even attempted something like this, and honestly, I love it. I love this connection. I love these intertwining things. Now, this does kind of interfere with my other problem. Intertwining main character just happens to be related to blah, 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 blah. Bleach kind of ruined this for me, so you can blame Bleach for this. But I don't like when the main character has connections to, oh my god, this person is sure special. Oh my god, your father was so-and-so of the so-and-so tribe, and he was the legendary blah 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 of the blah blah blah, and your great-great-grandfather is a descendant of the blah blah blah, who discovered blah blah blah. I'm not really a big fan of that, because it makes everything seem too coincidental. Okay, the character we just happen to be following, the character that we just happen to know is the main character, just so happens to be the great-great-grandson of, oh my god, the legendary blah blah blah. You see, it just, sometimes I like when the main character isn't related to much, but finds a way to become a legend themselves. Dragon Ball did this and then reeled back on it, where Bardock was just this nobody Saiyan grunt that just happened to give birth to, well, not he didn't give birth, but just happened to be the father of Goku, a legendary hero. I love that because Bardock doesn't mean much, but his son does. Unfortunately, Dragon Ball paddled back on this, and then Dragon Ball Minus happened, and then they decided to make Bardock a legendary warrior in Dragon Ball Super's manga, and they decided to make him important, and I'm like, guys, you are completely ruining the whole point of the tragedy that is the nobody Saiyan that died. But whatever, make him the legendary hero. But yeah, I'm off tracking. But that is one of my gripes. Here, I'm gonna let it kind of pass, only because Liko's connections to the others doesn't really make or break the story. It's a happenstance situation, and Liko doesn't really get any benefits from it. There's never a point where we're like, oh, Liko can do that because she's the descendant of Lucius. The show never really, targets her as being the important person because of that. She just happened to have the pendant. In fact, Miss Diana not mentioning her grandmother, Diana not mentioning her grandmother and saying that she died young is a benefit to the story. Because, yeah, it's a happenstance, coincidental thing, but it also means that they weren't so tied to it that they can be like, oh, yeah, we're descendants of legendary heroes. And once you look back on it, it's not that crazy. One, we get to see the past. We see we see Pokemon Horizon do that cool thing where the screen turns into a widescreen movie type of situation. I love when Horizons does that for some reason. I can't explain it. And fun fact, fun little thing. Dedene's the first Pokemon to show up in the flashback. Oh no, that just brings joy to me. And again, they say this is 100 years ago. If they had said this is 150 years ago, I think I could digest it a little bit more. But the average person, even if you went back, Ristal died early, but even if she died early at say age 40 or 30 to 40 or whatever, that would still mean that was 100 years ago, 40, that would still leave 60 years left. Miss Diana is Liko's grandmother. So that means when she was born, she probably gave birth to Liko's mom at around we'll say 25 to 30. Probably young. In Japan, they actually believe in most women have marrying and having children much younger. So we could say 20. So we'll say Miss Diana was probably about 22, 23 when she had Liko's mom. Liko's mom was probably 23, 24, probably got later, so 24, 25. So we could do the 22 plus the 25. 22 plus 25 is 47. 47. Then she would have Liko around that time. Yeah, maybe. It's possible. It all is possible. Miss Diana would be about 60 at this point. Miss Diana has to be 60 or 70 at this point. She has to be at least 60. I'm betting on 60. So if Miss Diana's 60, then that means Layla, Miss Lila, unfortunately, she probably passed. She's gone. She's probably at like 80 years old. She's probably cranking 80 and is gone. She's out. Okay, well, 100 years kind of fits. It's weird. Math's weird. We'll say it happened. Anyway, back to the story. Seems that Ristle ends up meeting off against Lucius, and Lucius freaking uses a Rayquaza against 3 weak Pokemon, and they run away instantly. A little bit of an overkill, but it's funny. Whatever. Turns out when they go to a bar in order to ask questions about Rukia, the land of Rukia, they get laughed at by a couple of like bar passers, and then Gibeon comes to their defense because he's done research on the place himself. So the 3 travel together, and they are funded and called the Explorers, and that's how we get the Explorers name that was talked about with Hamber. Hamber tells Hamber, who's working with Gibeon, has the name Explorers in that group, which is the same Explorers that Amatheo and the others, Onyx and Sango and them, they all work for the Explorers. That name was used because Gibeon is the leader of that group. So they're using the name Explorers, which is the exact same name that Ristle, Lucius, and Gibeon used originally. They are the Explorers. The Explorers travel and eventually they make it to Rukia. Once they make it to the land of Rukia, they see that Rukia is a lush paradise area where regular Pokemon and legendary Pokemon thrive. They're all together. But unfortunately, it seems to be some crystallized energy that keeps them bounded, but it's dangerous. As of before, it was left like alone. It was a normal form of balanced energy that just sort of like radiated in the area. Well, unfortunately, Gibeon wants this energy because it's limitless. Lucius tells Gibeon, yo, this is not, I got bad vibes. I'm not digging this. It's too much. Well, no, he hits a Kanye. No one man should have all that power. And Gibeon's like, the clock's ticking, I just count the hours. But no, seriously, after that, Lucius and Ristle are on full confirmation. They don't want to deal with it. Gibeon, however, is stubborn. He wants the energy. He has his Zygarde, which is shiny, ends up digging it up. Well, unfortunately, since they dug it up and it's revealed, it absorbs the area around it and starts to grow. It becomes more crystallized and it becomes unstable. It causes the Pokemon to go crazy. It starts to just infest the area, and if left unchecked, it can destroy the world. All this chaos is happening. Ristle's Pokemon is Terapagos, the same Terapagos that Liko is traveling with right now. It ends up overgrowing all over the place. Even Zygarde, the Zygarde that was working with Gibeon, even Zygarde gave up some of its cells to like contain the energy because it's unbalanced. It makes sense. It's trying to keep the earth in check. The rest of the Pokemon that Lucius have end up like containing all the energy and using their attacks, but it's still growing too much. So Terapagos knows there's only one situation left. If it crystallizes all that energy using its own Terra energy to lock everything in, and then in order to save the other Pokemon and contain them so that they can block off that energy too, Terapagos contains all the Pokemon in crystallized form and in like these orbs and launches them to separate parts of the world, like the Dragon Balls or something. So after that, unfortunately, Terapagos is gone. Lucius is self-contained in that area space, so he's probably kept alive by this as well. Gibeon fell in the crevice where the energy was being radiated, and that's probably the reason why he's still alive. He's probably enveloped the Rukium into his body, and it's kept his life going as life support. Anyway, because of that, everybody's separated. Everybody is like in their respective areas. And we have our plot. We have our setup. And that's how we get to where we are today. Ristle was pregnant after all of this happened. So that apparently, like I said, that means at some point while Gibeon, Lucius, and Ristle were traveling, Lucius and Ristle were, yeah. I mean, come on, it had to happen at some point because she said she got pregnant like shortly after. So, yeah. After that, we come to our situation now, and that's the story, and she's sticking to it. She gives up ownership of Terapagos at this point. I mean, she has no choice. By the time the time period goes back to normal, she'll be dead. So Terapagos, I'm guessing if you die, your Pokemon gets released. I don't know how Pokemon logic works, because I remember they actually kind of covered this. Where in one episode of Pokemon, when somebody died, they had a Ninetales and it was in the Pokeball, but it never got released from the Pokeball. So what happened? I don't know. I'm counting it if I think the rule is if a trainer is dead and the Pokeball the Pokemon that's contained in that Pokeball doesn't stick around with the trainer long enough, the Pokeball will just self-release it. Like, enough time has passed, the Pokemon in the Pokeball has no activity, so it'll just release it by itself. I don't know. That's what I think happens. There's probably somebody who's done research on this. I don't know. Pokeball lore is weird, but I'm gonna say that Terapagos is released, because that's the only way this next scene happens. Liko catches Terapagos. That's what happens afterwards. Ristle goes back because it's time for her to go. I guess I don't know what measures how much time she has, but it's time for her to go. And Liko then captures Terapagos. So Liko officially has 3 Pokemon: Florgato, Hatchrim, Terapagos. Yep, 2 Pokemon and a legendary Pokemon. Neat. Anyway, with that being said, though, Liko officially owns Terapagos. That's cool. I guess I'm gonna be honest. Terapagos is the most annoying Pokemon on that show, but I understand that it has a whole plot behind it, so I gotta bear with it. But yeah, that's what we got, and we see that Miss Diana leaves. She showed up for the lore and then left after the lore finished. Honestly, I'm not mad at it. They've shown to grow much more without her. So I'm glad that she showed up just to get in that understanding. And she actually got a lot of closure because she learned about her mom and her grandmother and stuff. It's good. It's good closure for her. And she leaves. And she like I said, they do Miss Diana really well. She stays just long enough for her usefulness, and then she leaves. She doesn't overstay her welcome. She's not just there for the sake of it. She does what she needs to do, and then she's immediately out. And honestly, I think they handle her pretty well. Liko, getting a lot of lore dump on this, learning a lot about herself. I honestly like it. Well-needed development for her, well-needed development for her backstory. Honestly, I can dig it. I can really dig it. I do like it. They're gonna go ask Professor Freed's. They're gonna go ask Freed's Exceed's co-worker for some advice on where to go next, or at least a lead on where to go next, in order to find Entei. Now, for the sake of this, I know about Entei a little bit, and I know, because obviously a bunch of episodes have passed and I'm trying my best to catch up. I know about Entei. Trust me, I know about Entei. I do. But I want to see how they handle this, because I'm curious how they choose to go about it. Hopefully it's not an ass pull. Having Liko's great-great-grandmother come in and pretty much plot, lore dump everything, it is a fast-forward button on the research of lore. I would have found it a little bit better if Miss Diana had picked up a book and they all read it instead. I think it's a little cheating to pray and then magically make the person show up. But this is fine too, I guess. They definitely could have been a Miss Ristle's diary entry, and then they could have read it. And then when they read it, it goes in like a cool little flashback, and then we see everything go about. But having her herself be there, okay. Also, I guess it's because Terapagos sees Ristle for the last time. That's like the last time they see each other canonically, because Terapagos turns into a pendant afterwards. So I guess that was closure for Terapagos, is to finally see Ristle for the last time and then start anew with Liko. I guess, again, I think it's cheating to basically bring the person to life just so she can talk to people that's well above the future. And it's like, you should be having culture shock. You're 100 years in the future. You're talking to people 100 years in the future. For all intents and purposes, this is cheating. But we'll let it go. We'll let it go. We'll leave it alone. But, with that being said, honestly, 9 out of 10, I love the lore dump. Kind of cheating how they got there. But I do love the lore dump. I was deeply invested. I was deeply involved. I honestly really liked that. There was just such... Honestly, it made me excited for the original Explorers. I was like, seeing them three, I was like, can we just have a show with them? That would have been cool. I would have loved if they had taken like 5, maybe 10 episodes to just be about Lucius, Ristel, and Gibby, and I would love to watch that. That would have been great. Have the whole thing in widescreen, make a whole spin-off of that. That would have been fun. I would have loved that. That would have been a good time. I would have loved that. But it is what it is. 2 episodes. That's fine. It doesn't overstay its welcome, I guess. I had a great time watching these 2 episodes, and I'm glad I was able to review them both in this section. With that being said, though, the next chunk of episodes I will cover, I'm going to be covering a few of those. And then I'm sure we're going to be covering mostly like the Entei stuff. So I'm probably going to lump those all into one. But I'm definitely trying my best to move forward with these Horizons episodes so that I can catch up to the current Horizons episodes. And then we will be back on track. But with that being said, I will see y'all then, everybody. Tyrone TG3 out.